Welcome to the Diary of an African Entrepreneur, where we explore the real stories, the strategies, and the struggles behind building successful businesses in Africa. I am DJ Adebusoye, I'm your host, and I'm a partner at Sile Capital. Today, we are going to be exploring the story of Ope Fayomi, the co-founder and CEO of Pulus Africa. Pullus is an innovative agri-tech company revolutionizing poultry farming across Africa. Co-founded by Ope Fayomi, Pullus provides end-to-end solutions to smallholder poultry farmers, from affordable day-old chicks and quality feed to veterinary support and market access. With a tech-driven distribution network and a strong focus on farmer empowerment, Pullus is not just providing and improving yields, but transforming poultry into a viable livelihood for thousands of rural entrepreneurs. Ope, welcome, and it's good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much, DJ, for having me.
Yeah, so just to get into your mindset a little bit, Ope, how did you get into poultry? What exactly resonates poultry with you? Because I know you, and I know you've been in the world of poultry for a long time. Why poultry?
Well, to say what got me into poultry, man.
Okay, I like that.
I mean, that's just on the lighter mood. I came off school, finishing my degree from Ope Fayomi University, studying engineering physics, and while in school, I actually dabbled into business, and I was already getting fascinated with the concept of business development. And I knew I just wanted to develop things. I wanted to build businesses. I wanted to help businesses grow. And I started working somewhere as a business development executive. But then, at that point, I was planning to get married also. And then my husband he had a small poultry farm that he was doing like a hobby business. And for me, it was more like, and he would always complain and say, oh, these people, because he had his regular job, but then he was just doing this thing. Also coming from like an agricultural home, his dad was a professor of veterinary medicine. And, he would always complain that, there were people, they were buying his chickens, they were owing him and all of that. And I'll be like, because you're doing it casually, you're not taking it serious. And then there was something about, in 2014, the government of Nigeria was doing this UN program. And I took that as a nudge to turn that small hobby farm into a structured business. And then we got it registered and we started doing it like a business. We entered for that grants program, even though we didn't win the grant, but that was the beginning for it, for me. And I took over the business from him, and then I started growing the farm and grew that farm from that 500 birds up until about 60,000 capacity many years later. So for me, that was how I got into poultry farming. It started more like an excitement about seeing something you could build and develop. But then as I got deeper into it, I got to love the concept that you could actually grow something that you could eat. I was excited anytime I ate my chickens. And I think the rest is history.
So that was one journey of you starting and entering into the world of poultry. But I think there was a transition at some point. Because I think there was a transition. So can you tell us about that transition? What happened and what led to it?
So it was more like I was growing the farm, doing just even few broilers, because like every other poultry farmer, I was caught in the web of market, lack of access to market, and I wanted to play it safe. So I'd rather do layers for egg production in most cases and then stick to broilers. And there was a day, I think it was shortly after the lockdown, or one of those periods where during the COVID era, where they would let us out for a period of time and, to go shop and do other things. And I wanted to eat rice and chicken that day. And I walked into one of the leading quick service restaurants in Nigeria to buy rice and chicken. And then they said there's no chicken, that I could only get rice. And it was weird. Like, it's like entering into a store that says we sell TV, and then they say there's no TV, we only have the screen. So it was funny because chicken was in the name, and I'm like, you don't have chicken. So, like, why would I buy just rice alone? If I wanted to eat in my house, I wouldn't even eat rice without meat or something. And I think there was this day the store manager was around and the store manager was explaining that, oh, our suppliers from the southwest couldn't come crossover and all of that. And I'm like, but I grow chicken. I know a lot of farmers that grow chicken that would want to sell chicken to you. And the person was like, oh, if you can sell to us, the problem is that, we buy in bulk. And I'm like, what's your demand? And the person said, and they told me, and I'm like, okay, I know that is way beyond what I can do, but you mean if I have chickens that meet your standard, you will buy whatever the quantity? And they said yes. And for me, that was the cue. So I went back home, I sat down, and I started to think, how can I pivot the current model of doing more layers and just broilers in, festive seasons to begin to. So in fact, from that moment, I started pitching the business to be able to meet the demand of this particular brand. And I started working, I changed my business model, and I said, okay, how can I increase the capacity of the broilers on the farm? After I started engaging more with them at this point, they gave me the requirements to meet up to, and I started working towards it. I saw that it was achievable. Within about 7 months, I was able to meet up with that requirement. At this point, I had scaled down on the layers, upscaled the broiler production, and I started. Here was I who was doing just about maybe I probably do like 1,000 broilers, 2,000 broilers in a year to target different festive seasons like Salah, Easter, Christmas. I built the model to be able to do 5,000 per batch every 6 weeks. And I started with that. I started to supply them. I didn't have anything. It was just the farm. So I reached out to a lot of people, like someone who could offer me cold storage support, how I could transport the birds and all of that. And I started doing it. And still, I couldn't meet their demand. And then I scaled up to 10,000. The first time I did 10,000 broilers, it was as if I would die. It was hectic. It was like my life depended on it. It was full of a lot of challenges. But then I remember when the processing company who was going to help me to process, when we were doing the transportation of those birds, like the first week that we did like move 3,000, it was surreal for me. And I built that model, like did a couple of 10,000 cycles. And then, should I say I met you? And then for me, it was more like I discovered that there was a gap. I couldn't do that on my own. And it was going to be difficult to continue to build that business to meet the demand of this brand. So I started looking for external capital. And so I think, that was the defining moment to answer your question.
We will come to that part of the capital piece. One thing you've established, which I want to follow that trail a little bit, is that when you came up with the idea, the first thing that came to your mind was not, I need to go and look for money. The first thing that came to your mind was, how do I solve this problem? And I think to an extent, you started solving that problem with what you had. So can you explain that to us? So for somebody who is listening and wondering, I have this idea, I want to do this business, I think there is this demand, but I don't think I have sufficient capital to be able to do that. How did you, at that point where you came up with the idea, even if it was in the early stages, what were the steps you took that made that business come alive, even though you did not have sufficient capital?
So for me, I think, the experience I had gained over the years in the business was helpful. And because at that point, like I could sit down and prepare an economics of production for you. If you tell me an economics of production of this number of birds, I already knew it. But at that point, because I also understood this was a different market, the market I was used to was like people would come to the farm and price the birds. And I knew this was different. They were going to price the birds per weight. So I was focused on building a model that could meet that. Beyond that, I also knew that there were a lot of regulatory stuff that I had to work out. And for me, that was like harder at that time, even beyond, because I could get the money and produce the birds and it wouldn't meet their quality standards. So I made sure that, I could. Looking back, I think I could have actually felt money was my first problem, but I didn't, which was helpful. It actually helped me to navigate all those other, how I could solve the other challenges and meet up with those other requirements. And it was afterwards that I now came over to the issue of how can I, and even at that, I looked around what I had at that moment could do. So I had layers, and my immediate call to action was, okay, let me sell those layers that were already laying at that time. We deploy the capital back, into broilers. And after I did that, and I had something to show, I had like friends, family, people I could meet to say, oh, this is what I've done, and show them the demand, and to say, okay, I'm actually in need of capital to do this. And a couple of them were able to like come through to say, okay, let's do this. But it was after I'd done all those things and done a cycle. I did like, I think 1 or 2 cycles, and they saw it. So there was something to show at that point, and I'd navigated all those other gray areas that they also wouldn't have known about.
So you did not just go to say, I have an idea, give me money. You did recycles. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Exactly. And then you showed them that.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, brilliant. Your co-founders, how did you come by meeting your co-founders?
So, the CTO of Pullus happened to be my brother. And it's funny because this is someone that I'd looked up to growing up, and as far as I remember, like, he had always been everything, like my computer savviness, and all of that came from him. Growing up, like, would do all sort of things on the computer, do some programming. And I recall in my 100 level days, when my parents bought me a laptop, he was the one that put CorelDRAW, a lot of things that I learned how to do on the computer. We've done a couple of things together, really, and for me, I knew the key role of technology and what I wanted Pullus to be. And so even when the whole idea and I was refining the concept in my mind, he was my go-to person to say, oh, this is how I'm thinking about this. And so when it was time to really start, there wasn't any better person to do that. So that's how I came about my co-founder and CTO. The other person who is a key person, who is a key management team in Pullus, not a founder or a co-founder, is the CEO, who happened to be my friend in the uni. We met in the uni when we got into the uni in 2007. And I would say that this is someone that had been a friend and a champion who always believed in everything. I started like an advert outfit while I was in school, I think before my penultimate year. And I remember that she was one of the people I employed, if you call it an employment, then to help with it. The idea was to just help businesses, put them on catalog, and I would design these things on CorelDRAW then and get it printed and shared. And so when it was also time, that I knew that this is it for me, I've gotten the blueprint and I wanted to run with it. I was ready to make mistakes, I was ready to fail, I was ready to succeed. I didn't see any other person better than, bringing on board. And she initially joined us as HR business partner, and then over time transitioned as COO. So for me, that was how I came about, having a very formidable startup team of people who have always believed in me and who were ready to go, the whole length, the whole 9 years, if I would say, with me.
How did you get them to believe in your dream very early on? They probably left whatever they were doing to come on this ride with you. How did you convince them?
Well, when you say how did I convince them, I think maybe they can answer how they were convinced.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was also the commitment they saw. I showed that this was it for me. At this point, I'd been working for 5 years on a USAID funded project. And even before the project came to an end, I was already ideating Pullus. And they had seen over the years, like I started poultry. I would say that if you ask me how long have I been a poultry farmer, I would say 2013. And so they knew that if I really wanted to do something and my mind was at it, I would stay at it. And I'd done this up from 2013 to 2021. And then I was now coming ahead to say, this is what, this is going to transition into. So they knew that I was, to a large extent, consistent at whatever I chose to do. And so it wasn't difficult giving for them to decide to give me that too. I wasn't asking for something I didn't have. And it was about a lot of things were not clear, as it is with when you are founding, starting up something. But so it wasn't like we had like this roadmap that was like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. There was a tendency it would fail, there was a tendency it would never pick up. But I think for me, they saw that consistency in me, and they saw that I was determined to do this. I'd stayed on this for a long time, and so maybe with a little bit of sweet mouth, I was able to convince them.
Yeah, you talked about the role of your brother as a CTO, and I'm wondering, as many people might be as well, poultry, you're selling broilers, you're selling chicken. What's the goal of technology in your business model?
Oh, so I remember that at some point I was going to, I'd applied for some loan, about 200 million, and to develop the business. And for me, I think that was the point where I knew I'd done a couple of cycles, on a large scale basis. Number one, I knew that to be able to upscale the farm, as it were, at that time, solely on debt capital and the likes would require a lot. And it will require a lot of running, a lot of operational costs to sustain that growth. I also saw the potential of the industry, of the poultry industry in Nigeria. And one of the things I'm grateful for, even though I didn't get that loan facility I was after, due to a lot of things like insecurity and disruptions that happened in Nigeria at that time, it opened my eye to see that I could be the model out of. I would say I saw the potential that poultry farmers, smallholder poultry farmers, had what it took to actually, bridge the demand gap. And the question was how. So for me, I haven't done like a core agribusiness SME. I also knew that in terms of scalability, you couldn't do it alone. Technology had to be the catalyst. And that was wow. So the next thing beyond the idea of, I'm going to work with farmers, I'm going to build a business that can empower farmers to grow chickens, was how can technology be catalytic in that model? And that was what really defined what Pullus was and, how Pullus came about. So for me, I knew that technology was going to be catalytic to scale. We didn't just want to build a business where we're just doing the same, like a pseudo SME. We wanted to build a scalable business, a business that could, we could build a model and take that same model to Ghana and it would work. Take that same model to Kenya and it would work. And even, across Africa. And I knew that technology had to be it. So the next thing was now refining how the role that technology would play. And that was what, that was what defined the whole concept of what Pullus will be.
And would you say that technology has been a competitive advantage for you, or are you still on that journey to actually getting the full benefit of leveraging technology?
I would really say in a short while, it has really been a competitive advantage. In the first, maybe if you had asked me this question in like the first 6 months of the business, I would say, we are still on that journey. But I think that in the past 1 year, we've really seen the impact of how technology can be catalytic and can help us scale. So for us, besides having our model that we run with to say, we're going to use the smallholder farmers, we're going to empower them, we're going to train them. One of the things that was core to what we wanted to do, and it was clear from the beginning, was we're going to have our in-house extension unit. And I think that was like, for us, that was like I would say the yardstick to say we'll be able to know when it's time to pivot, where a larger percentage of the extension or the veterinary support we're giving to farmers was being influenced by technology, not just people. And I'm proud to say that in the past 1 year, or mostly like in the past 6 months, we've been able to come to that point where we've seen the impact of some of the things we wanted to solve, like improving reducing the mortality rate of farmers, improving their knowledge about poultry farming, has been more, even for the farmers, the technology, the app, has done more work, as showed more of those impacts than the influence of the physical people, what the physical extension officers do. And with this, is actually helping us to reach more farmers, because now we get people who just, who come across our solution, and then they reach out because they started using the solution. It's not even like say we'll meet them and then get them to use the solution. They start using it, and then along the way, they're like, oh, we are using this, but we want to know what this can do for us, what this can do for us. And there are a lot of farmers that we've gotten to work with through that. So yeah, I think there is a long way to go. I mean, there's a lot. We've got a lot of, in our growth plan, there's a lot of exciting things and interesting things about the technology part that we're going to unveil as we go, even this year and next. But I would say that so far, so good. Really, so far, so good on the technology end.
Ope, would you say that your business is a technology business or a technology-enabled business?
I'd say it's a technology-enabled business.
Okay, good. And that leads me to another question. So for people who are looking to, because it's innovative, right? Many people would not think that poultry can be enabled by technology the way you've done it, and it has built a competitive edge for you. For people who are looking to embed and integrate technology into their business model, what would you advise as the right approach to follow?
I would say solve a problem first.
Brilliant. I like that. Can you dwell a bit more on that?
So oftentimes, we can, especially in the world of where people are trying to build a business, everybody's trying to do a startup, right? And the only thing we're thinking about is, oh, I'm going to do, now AI even makes things worse. People want to solve to take a cup now with AI. If AI can take you a cup and pour water for you, people are going to build that solution. But the thing is, for me, it's more like look beyond. First of all, solve a problem. So for us, we identified key problems that farmers were facing. We did a little market validation and trying to understand the key. I was a poultry farmer. I could have I know the problems, I know the challenges I faced, let's just do the business. But then I still spent over a year doing a lot of service, talking to a lot of farmers, farmer groups and everything, across Nigeria, not just even in Kaduna or Abuja or something. And to better understand, I needed to know. Yes, at the end of the day, it wasn't different from what I knew, but it gave me we were sure that we are taught to, the people who faced those challenges. So it was about, these are the problems that these farmers are facing. Naturally, how can we solve them? A farmer needs market access. How can you connect the farmer to the market? Oh, there's a buyer, there's a buyer. We put together the demand, and then we began to work on how to aggregate supply. Farmers are doing this, they have lack of knowledge, they are experiencing high mortality rate. The immediate answer was, no, how can technology do that? How can we improve their knowledge? How can we train them? So we identified the problem, we identified the solution or the best way to solve the problem, and then we're like, how can technology help this better? How can technology help us solve the problem in a better way? How can technology help us reach more farmers so that we can solve this problem for them? Contrary to if we had just wanted to, I've seen a lot of people build a lot of software for farmers to help them to like a farm management stuff. But for us, there's a farm management part embedded in our solution, but that's not the only thing. A farmer can use the farm management software to register their day-old chicks, their mortality rate, but they can't sell. You haven't solved the problem of the farmer. So let us be able to distinguish between what the real problem is and what the perceived problem is. Technology can get us carried away oftentimes thinking that, oh, once a farmer can use app. We found issues where sometimes the solution is there, but a farmer that doesn't even update their web browser, that doesn't have social media, that doesn't have data for this thing, how can they use, update? So there are a lot of issues that comes to nitty-gritty of even the technology pose as a challenge to the farmers. So for me, it's in actual solving the problem. When a farmer or whoever the target audience sees that you are solving their exact problem, it's easy for them they become more open, to embrace the medium through which you are bringing that solution, which can now be technology based. But if you are not solving their problem, forget about whatever you build in your app.
Thank you very much for that. At what point did you realize that you were onto something? So early days, you started doing Pullus. Tell us about that moment when you just realized, looks like there's something here, even on that journey.
I think I would say June 2023. So something happened in 2023. I would say that between January 2023 or December 2022 to December 2022 to May 2023, I was so obsessed with, what I was building. Like, I would spend a lot of time talking to, doing questions, interviews, talking to farmers, trying to, I can't remember how many versions of pitch deck I developed within this period, how many applications. I would apply for this, apply for that, these grants, that accelerator, and I would get no repeatedly. And it was June. I'd started talking to a particular organization, and then there was this meeting where we had, and they wanted me to talk to like an external consultant. And I was on that call. I was just explaining what, I was doing then. Then we're just working with a few farmers, barely over 100 farmers then. And the person said that, oh, if you did this could actually happen. And I'm like, yeah, I thought about it. But this is the reason why we're not thinking about it yet. So we spent the next 2 months. So that conversation for me, that was like a moment where I remember after that call, I took out my notepad and I wrote a couple of things in which it was more like canceling the model that we had before. And I wrote that I think this model would work. Flash forward to September, we started iterating that model, and then we did a market validation exercise based on that new model. And bam, for me, I think that was the moment so it was like a transition from the meeting I had in June, took 4 months up until September, 3 months up until September, October that year, where we were now talking to farmers that we had been working with. And that's what forms, till today, that's like the core of what our model is. It was from that first call where I saw that there could be something here, and then that market validation exercise that proved that. At that point, I knew that if we hold on to this, success was very achievable, and that has been the case. Holding on to that secret is not a secret anymore now, but seeing that, that could actually help us to tie everything together. The solution we had, the technology as an enabler, that would tie it up together and make everything work great. And that was it. So I'll say June and then September 2023.
You've talked a lot about you talking to farmers, you talk to farmers. You've said that quite a lot. And for me, I'm always happy to hear that, that engagement is probably one of the things that has helped you to understand the real problems. But to further accentuate that, was there a problem you thought you were solving that you realized when you started talking to farmers that is not the problem you should be solving? So maybe you started off by wanting to do something, but through your engagement with the farmers, you had to deviate from what you were planning before.
Yes. So I think in the early onset, when I would talk to farmers, I would just ask them, open-ended questions. And it took me to look at the result of what they were, and I would say finance, farmers would say. And I started to think, okay, we could probably just work with banks, provide inputs to them and all of that. So it really brought like finance at the top of the problem that farmers were going through. And for a long time, I was going ahead with that narration. But then along the way, I discovered that when we now started, I discovered that no, finance is not the problem to solve for. Finance could come in along the way. The problem was the market access. If I could. And this was one of the ways that I knew that was it. So we would go to a place to take birds, to buy the birds of a farmer, and we would see other farmers come out to say, oh, can you buy my birds too? How do you pay? Are you sure I'm going to get my money and all of that? And then we saw that just that hearsay of, oh yeah, they can buy your birds, anything you have, and you get your money, you were sure to get your money immediately or within 24 hours, because we were pushing that narrative a lot then. That was enough. So we saw that even the farmers, and then when we now heard it from them that if they knew that they could get their money, if you buy from them and sell, if they sell to you and that they'll get paid. A lot of them were even willing, and they were even taking loans to finance their farms. A lot of them, you'd see a farmer that was doing like 50 birds, knowing that actually like they can do 50 birds back to back and sell and make their money. We're willing to take in-kind loans from like the vendors around them and the likes to grow chicken to sell. The issue, that's when we discovered that part of the demand gap we're having in Nigeria is that market is... So it's funny, right? We have a demand gap. Why is there a demand gap? Because there's not enough supply. Why is there not enough supply? Because farmers who are supposed to produce, part of the problem is they don't think that there's a market for them to sell to. But we've discovered that it wasn't just the market thing. It was about their payment. We saw a lot of farmers on the field who had lost money to bad loans, bad sales that had become like bad debts. People that they had sold to and they would get the money in. Imagine a farmer just selling 100 chickens and he gets paid like 7 times. How much is the money that you have to break it into 7 times? The farmer is not enough to go back to produce. So for us, we saw it that it was farmers they had just lost faith in the system. They wanted something they could believe in. They wanted a system they could hold on to, and that they could trust that if they go out of their way to work with, they wouldn't get burnt. So for us, it became more like, it moved from just being a business to being like a trust partnership with the farmers. That we trust you, we trust that. And that trust was what now metamorphosed into, after we have provided them market access and they were already using our solution for a while, we also now had the confidence to say, we can actually give you loans to do. So what looked like the first problem we were going to solve for now became, I would say, in the list of pains and value that we're offering to farmers now, is now like the last thing that we ended up doing, because we realized that there were more key things that we had to solve for, that we had to get out of the way before we get to the point where there's an exchange of, of money or inputs or stuff in credit form.
So understand the scale of the impact that you've made. How many farmers are we talking about that you've been able to reach over the last couple of years, whether by buying directly from them or extension and all that? How many farmers have you been able to reach?
I think the number sits around 30,100, 30,000 plus at the moment, as of today. Yeah.
And for those who are listening, this business is not in Lagos or in the Southwest; it's in Kaduna. So, if you know Nigeria very well, Kaduna is in the northern part of Nigeria. So I was even going to ask you that: do you think location has been a blessing or a curse for your business?
Huge blessing. It's a secret. You don't make me spill all the beans here.
Okay.
Lagos people should stay in Lagos. Let's do that here.
All right. I think you've said enough already on that. So we can move on to another question. So thanks for that impact. And I'm sure that it also reflects on the tonnage of birds that you also you're processing, because for those who don't understand, you actually the major buyers or major customers are Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Who are your customers? How are you growing that part of your business? Maybe if you want to mention names, you can. If you don't want to, you don't need to. But just to talk about how you building that part of the business.
So for us, I think for me, so just again to be clear, while I was going to start Pullus, I shut down my other business, So I'm no longer a poultry farmer. I mean, an active poultry farmer. I'm just a poultry farmer, a proxy by working with poultry farmers now. So I had to, that business shut down a lot of things. Even insecurity was a factor. And again, part of the realization that it's more risky and more, hard to say you want to grow a big farm and all of that. So what we now do now is that we have farmers that are doing all of that for us. So that business shut down. Was an entirely new business and with its own model, with people and all of that. And but the first thing was to leverage on the relationships, the linkages that I had, as growing that business before. So when we started doing market access for farmers, some of these processors, quick service restaurants, like Chicken Republic, Silverbird Eatery, so many of them, Meat and Egg, Bank, were people that I could easily, because I'd worked with them before, I'd sold to them before, to pick up the conversation to say, well, here I am, same me, but different business, different model. This is what we do now. And, we never hide the fact that we don't own our farms. We work with farmers. We're in market access. We are brokering and de-risking the supply chain for farmers. We're connecting them to market access. But we take the risk, by buying the birds from them, doing all of those supply chain things, so logistics, cold chain, and then we will give you the quality birds that we want. So this was like the immediate low hanging fruit that we latched to get into the market. But since then, I mean, we have grown from having just maybe like 4 or 5 major customers at the beginning of 2024 to having over like 54 customers now. And these are 54 unique customers that are cut across different markets and different states in Nigeria, where we supply to. So there are quick service restaurants, wholesalers, retailers, processors, and, in that mix across these markets. So that's what we're doing now. And these numbers are growing for us. Even though our operations is still more heavily around the demand side, we're doing a lot of work with the farmers that are producing birds, offering them a lot of support and value. We are getting to the point where we're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting around the market side and connecting more of these potential customers to our market and to the farmers that we're working with.
Now, to move to the topic of financing, you have successfully raised different types of financing. I think what is unique is the different types of financing you've raised. So for someone who is, first of all, what do you think has made you successful in being able to attract investors of different types into your business?
So I think we've been able to show how catalytic this kind of financing can be. The first finance that we received as a company was a grant. It was a 25K grant. I mean, it was something another person might think is small now. But what we did was we got that because we also had our model clear and this was what we wanted to do. We were able to use that to increase our strides. We came from having like just about 100 and I think it was like 128 farmers then we were working with. And just with that grant, within a space of 4 months, we increased the number of farmers we were working with to 600. And then we were at this point, then we were in an accelerator, the Gen F accelerator, where we were pitching the business for our pre-seed financing. And we were fortunate to get a mixture of equity and debt for this. And that was 2023, in December 2023. We took that money and we grew our strides. expanded our partnerships, expanded our markets, increased the number of farmers working, they increased the team. We grew the team from Pullus currently has a team of 41 staff. But then, as at then, we were just about 6. So we've grown from like 6 people to 41 people within the space of 1 year, of 18 months. And then we've also now worked with over 30,000 farmers, actively providing market access to about 2,000 farmers, with almost 5,000 farmers on the app using our solution. So it's also showing the impact. We are a tech-enabled business, but also a social enterprise. So we've been able to show that we are true to our model. Our impact is very core to what we do. And we've been able to show that we're true to our model to our partners. We have partners that support us with grants beyond the equity that we've raised. And we just had like a 60 decibel report done. We had our own 2024 impact report that was also published and sent to our partners. So we've been able to show, that they say show and not tell, or show and tell in this case. And our stories have been consistent. It's not just like these figures. We have a database that is transparent, that it's not just cooking figures. I worked in the development sector, a couple of, USAID funded projects, and while I had an active career, and I saw a lot of agribusinesses that would usually cook up figures, we're working with 30,000 farmers, we're working with 40,000 farmers. But when you really look at those numbers, you can't really see the impact there. For me, this was one of the things that I made sure that when we started sort of on this journey, we said we would always have we would not ever find ourselves in that position where we have to cook up figures for anybody. It's going to be the numbers we're working with that we can show, we can prove, we can tell to anyone at any time. And for me, I think that has been instrumental to, even other linkages in support that we've gotten.
What kind of a leader would you say you are?
I would say that I think I'll consider myself a transformational leader. If I would say, this is a question I've had to ask, also look at a couple of times. But the truth is, I think I can actually be any. Sometimes I could be just inspirational. Sometimes I could be, what's that other one, with democratic or autocratic. But I think I consider myself a transformational leader. And that's oftentimes that's kind of leadership I find myself practicing, because, and it speaks to what we're doing. I mean, we're trying to transform a lot of lives. And one of the things I understand as a leader, I've come to see, is beyond just the business, the people are also are like my priority. Yeah, so the business is key, but the people. I've had bosses, I think I had worked in four places or something before I started Pullus. And for me, when I look back at my career journey, I've had bosses who have been very inspiring and transformational. They've made things that have transformed. And I like I say, every of the job I got in my life had always been like a referral from the previous place I worked. So I was not that candidate where I was always that candidate where somebody referred, not like, oh, I saw this application and I applied. And I understand that the beyond the business, you could be the CEO of a business of a unicorn company, but you could be a boss that sucks, and that's not too good, right? Because so for me, I think my journey in leadership is first to be transformational and to be an impactful person to the people that work for me. So hence that style of leadership, I would say, that I often find myself in.
How do you get the best from your team?
I smile to them. So, one of the things that I think for me, I always say, and I tell people is, when people say, oh, how have you been able to do this, over time in this short while? And I just smile and say the team, because the kind of team that I have makes my life easy for me. And that didn't happen in one day. I think when I look at the first set of staff, the people that we employed at Pullus, they were a mixture of course, I've told you how, like, the management team, the CEO, the CTO came about. But even the early staff, these are people who, at one point or the other, some of them had worked with them, some of them were people that were just referred. But we built, it was more like a hidden promise that we made to ourselves that we're all going to make this work no matter what. I know this thing where they talk about, when you are trying to change management, how you want to, the early adopters, these people consistently over the years have remained in that category and have joined. So, for me, sometimes, and as the team gets growing, there was a time that we would all sit in this space and everybody could see everybody. So I could say, oh, what are you doing today? What are you doing today? But that's not the case anymore. There are some staff that, I may not even know how their voice really sounds, because now the chain is there are more chains in between. There's someone reporting to somebody that is now reporting to me. So I don't have this one-on-one touch with everybody anymore. But we have something in Pullus where we say, what's your top 5, your top 6, your top 7. And everybody has their own in the management team. And we made a pact that we're always going to make sure that these people, they were like, we're going to pay attention to them. And this not to say we don't pay attention to everybody, but we understand that you can't have everybody on board at the same level all the time. And that's the reality about life. And we just said, in order to make things easy, to make change management easy, to make the team getting everybody on board easy, we're going to diffuse this impact through these people, and then they can transfer it to the people who report to them. And we've seen how effective it can be. So sometimes, maybe most of the time or all of the time, when I say things, everybody wants to jump on and believe and get to action. Well, maybe other times not. But then maybe if the other guy says it, goes down to his unit and talks to them or stuff, they understand it better and they're able to believe and jump on it. So yeah.
And as a young woman who is building a business in agri-tech, what are some of the biases or challenges you're about to deal with?
A lot. I think there's, maybe I would say like there are two different biases. And this is something I've also heard from people who have also, found themselves, especially like females who would do this kind of thing, is sometimes that feeling of loneliness. So it's like there's an internal battle that you first of all have to fight. There's the internal battle, or shall I say the internal bias, and the external one. The internal one is that one where you go to a program, you go to an event, and you look at everyone and you just find out you're the only female or something. Or you look at people and you find out that maybe, so you're female, number one, then you are probably now younger than what, people expect that they should see. And so there's that internal bias that you have to snap out of. And that moment where you get to a place and you are not even if physically you're like the only female, you don't see it. It doesn't just come to you. And you have to get to a point where that is not an issue anymore. That doesn't affect you anymore. Then to now in the point where you are trying to get things and people just think, oh, because you're a lady, maybe you are married, you have a family, you may not have time to. And so they give it to the other guy who they think, oh, he's a guy. He'll be able to utilize this thing better. You'll be able to. I've applied for a program before where one of the judges told me that there were concerns as to, that they felt like a guy would be able to utilize that stuff further or push it further because women will have other challenges that they have to. So these are things that, we hear and we see, and it's sad. But for me, I think that first of all, I've gotten to a point where that internal bias, I've eliminated it completely. And it's that resounding word every time that makes me know I'm capable. I say I'm capable, I can do this, I've got this. if anybody thinks it's not time or I'm not fit for it, well, that's their loss. But then I think people or women like myself have to learn to conquer the internal bias, because that alone might even affect you from, going further, reaching further, and doing more.
For somebody who is an employee and thinking that I want to, maybe not even necessarily saying he or she wants to build a business, but wants to rise, wants to be able to grow their career quite remarkably from the position of a CEO and a founder, what advice would you give that person?
I would say that you have to be outstanding where you are. You cannot, it's actually going to be difficult to be outstanding when you build your own business if you can't be outstanding as a staff working in a place. The last job I had was a project manager for state agribusiness manager for a USAID funded project called the Agribusiness Investment Activity. I did that for about 5 years up until the time that the project wounded up in Nigeria. And the goal of the project was to facilitate access to finance for agribusinesses to the tune of $227 million. This project was in 7 states, and I was the state manager for Kaduna. I was able to facilitate 197 million out of the 227.
Wow.
So, and I did this all of the while ideating Pullus. What am I trying to say in that is to say that there's no way you can be outstanding in your thing if you can't be outstanding in someone else's thing. For me, I took that as, this is it. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm paid to do. And I did it with the whole of my might. I didn't think that, after all, I'm going to start a business. It's going to be successful. Why do I need this anyway? Or I didn't think anything. For me, it was all about, this is what I was doing at that time. And this is what I needed to focus on. It didn't stop what I was doing, ideating on my business or researching or talking to farmers. I was still doing that. I was gathering my insight for what I wanted to build. But I still didn't lose focus of what I was being paid to. And for me, it wasn't even just about the result. I know it can sound, you did 197 million out of, but looking back, it was beyond the tangible results. It was the intangible discipline, the resilience. There were organizations I would go to then, and they would say, no, we don't want to talk to you. No, we don't need whatever support you're offering, but I would still keep at it. There were people that in the first year of the project, I had started talking to them. They didn't give me audience until like the 3rd year. So the same way, now I would probably write an organization or an investor, a partner, and then I will keep writing and keep writing and keep writing until. So it was those intangible lessons, resilience, and I would say skills and everything that I developed along the way doing that translates to all of whatever it is that everyone is saying now about Pullus. So if you are employed somewhere, you can be outstanding. You can give it your all. And that's, for me, that's what, I think that's the barest minimum anybody can do. The moment you sign an offer to work in an organization, it means that you are willing to accept what you're being offered, what you're being paid. The next thing is to give it your all. People have this tendency to want to hide on that, and the money is not enough, but you accepted the offer. It means that you are saying, I will accept what you will give me, and in turn, I will give my best. Don't relent on that, because you don't know where you're going to find yourself tomorrow. If that's the same attitude you want to pull, it means that if you're doing your own thing, when things are not working or you're not getting the result you want to get, you just want to pull back. And that's not the spirit of an entrepreneur.
Brilliant. I really hope that gets across to as many employees or people who work for other businesses or companies, not even people who want to build their own businesses, because what you just talked about now is what I'll call the concept of ownership and excellence. You hone it and you just do it excellently, and somehow
That's the word.
you're able to come out. Yeah. without that solving capability. So brilliant. Thanks a lot for that. If there are many young people that are listening to you and they are wondering, what can they do? They want to build a successful business in Africa. What advice would you give to them?
The first thing is to learn. I think that I came across a report one time. I think it was around people who the most successful, and anyone can see it and say, oh, Bill Gates probably never worked somewhere. He just started Microsoft and it is what it is today. But in the context in Africa, I think that the most successful people are people who have also gained the experience elsewhere. I think it's better that if you're going to start something, you would have gained the experience in a structured environment. I mean, I worked with, I have like a team of, we're like 41, in Pullus at the moment. And I see the difference, right? Where we hire people, I see the difference between people without the corporate experience and people who have the corporate experience. And the same thing is going to translate if you're actually starting your own business. So I can imagine what someone without an experience, a work experience, starting a business, what it would look like. And that has actually been a lot of things that have happened where people just start SME businesses. And I recall there's one thing you always say, and even you made reference to that in your book, that you know that process where you're about doing something and you just discover the kitchen is not tidy. I think that's the word financiers use. You just see that corporate structure is so upside down, like everything is just, maybe the business is making sales there, but the corporate structure is zero. And I think that corporate discipline is one step towards having a very effective corporate structure. The idea or even the resources, like your father might be a billionaire, but that is not enough to be able to build a business that is going to sustain itself, a sustainable business with great corporate governance. Corporate governance, there's a saying they say, right? They say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It means your strategy can be excellent, but then you don't have the corporate discipline to build a structure. You don't even know what it is. It will like everything will crumble. The money, your father might have given you billions to start a business. The idea you think you have, or you had an MBA and you think it's great, that stuff can just put everything to ground. So for me, I think my number one lesson would be that you have to learn, maybe it's going back to the concept of internship, how people, you have to learn, you have to get some experience. Don't be too eager to start. I might have started Pullus 4 or 5 years earlier than I did, and it will have failed. But then, when I look back at all of the things that I learned along the way, it was like a piece. It was like a building block, piece by piece, in the journey in what it is now. And I'm still learning. As I speak to you, like, I'm still learning. There are a lot of things that I still want to be able to know how to do. There are a lot of books I read that because I know I don't know it all. I can't even know it all. So I think my first lesson, when you do that, a lot of things will come in. That's where you meet people. Maybe one of the things I would also say is, for me, it takes a village, right? I have my village. My village comprises of family, friends, mentors. I have my village. That gives you a mix. It gives you an avenue to build a healthy mix of a village. When you go out there, put yourself out there. It might not even be a job. It might be, you just want to volunteer. Something that means that you can serve that gives you that understanding that you can actually serve before being saved. And I think, but if you get that, other things can fall in line.
What advice will you give to your 20-year-old self?
Okay, so to my 20-year-old self, would be not to take a blind risk. I think in the past 16 years, there was a period of my life where there were a lot of, it's good to be ambitious, but then you shouldn't be overly ambitious or blindly ambitious. There's some things I've done those decisions I made that were out of just being so ambitious. And it's good to be ambitious when you have all the chips in play. and you understand the nitty-gritty. But don't just be ambitious over vibes, even if you have the money in your hand, that's not enough. That's what I was saying, that it's a mix of a lot of things that makes a grounded entrepreneur. It's not just the money. You could get the money and lose it. You could have the strategy and then, so I think let your ambition be well-rounded. That's the advice I would give to myself. If I was 20 years old again, yes, my ambitions should be born out of a rounded strategy and risk management, risk analysis and everything. Yeah, that's the advice I would give to myself.
We're going to tie it up by, we're going to do a rapid fire question. So I will ask you 4 questions and you just give me 1 line or 2 line answers to those questions.
Cool.
Are you ready?
Drum roll.
First question, who is your favorite African entrepreneur?
The CEO of MoneyPoint.
Tosin Olumide.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Interesting answer. Second question, what is one business book or podcast you will recommend?
There's a book that I read recently, last year, that was written by Agribusiness. I did those as you agree. This is not an advert. I think that book is the easiest, simplest, well-grounded book that an entrepreneur or anybody who is starting up to be an entrepreneur should read. Not just that. Do you know that a couple of my staff read that book? So it's not even just entrepreneurs, because it's also people who are working in institutions, who are working in organizations, knowing that this is important. And for me, because it ties the governance, 2 things that can be, I said something, I said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It speaks to how you can build a culture within yourself and in an organization or your organization that can transcend beyond, you are raising money, you are not raising money, there is money, there is no market. Because the governance part and the finance part, financial discipline, these 2 things ruin organizations. Haven't we read stories, of organizations that have raised billions of dollars, millions of dollars, and then you just hear that everything is down the drain. They can't function again. They are winding down. When you look at the 2 things, it's like one left and right leg. These two things are like 2 stools that can support, and it can make the smallest of organization to become global. And it can make the biggest of organization to become nothing. So for me, if anybody, you're just sitting around thinking about what you want to do, it will be that would be what I would recommend. I read that book twice. I mean,
Wow.
I read that book twice because there was something that happened one day, and I remember the story. I think it was something from the explanation for the yogurt company,
L&Z.
L&Z. And then I went back to read that stuff. It's and let me tell you what was the lesson for me there. It was like, sometimes don't be after speed. So speeding can kill. The same thing in business. Because I saw at the point in that story where L&Z could have chased after speed, we can do this, but it looked like they just slowed down. They had to slow down to even, like, a lot of companies probably came up and then what are these people doing? We're not hearing about them, but they were building in silence. And I think that building in silence is the discipline that a lot of people have to cultivate. But that book actually made it obvious. It made that story. It's an inspiring story and it's very much relatable. So yeah, there can be a lot of books out there. This is not to say there are not a couple of great books out there. I mean, you could want to read a book by Jeff Bezos or something, or great. But if you want something that's relatable to our terrain, to Africa, to Nigeria, that's it. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Ope. I'll accept your word that it's not marketable. Thanks a lot for that.
Like
What's the hardest decision you've made as a CEO?
saying no to money.
Yes, I can agree with you on that one. Yes.
Yeah, so there was this partnership stuff that we had the people just kept wanting to partner with us and they wanted to give us some funds for it. But for me, it wasn't just aligning the strategy. I saw that it would actually bring a detour in. It was like taking a detour and it was going to be like a distraction at that moment. And I had to say no to it. It was difficult, and the reason why I'm mentioning it as it wasn't just because it was a one-time decision. It was because they kept coming back, and I had to, that willpower to be able to stay with that answer to say no. And every time they came back with another like stuff to look at that same document again and still say no, and another time it looks like it's something else to look at it again and still say no. Yeah. So for me, that's it.
I agree with you. The last question: if you were not building Pullus, what would you be doing?
If I was not building Pullus, I think I would be working. I'll be doing something that is related to helping other agribusinesses or other businesses grow. So it will be like a mixture of project management and the business development, but definitely the agribusiness sector. So it could be either working with agribusinesses, something. I mean, yeah. So it would be around that mix anyway. But something helping other business. So if it wasn't my business, I would probably be helping other businesses.
Thank you very much, Ope. We've come to the end of the podcast. So thank you everyone for listening to the Diary of an African Entrepreneur. I hope you found today's episode very helpful. Do subscribe, like, comment, share with family, friends, and hopefully they'll be able to find this useful as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.